Hello wonderful humans, it's Genevieve, and in this video we are going to learn how to draw watercolor foliage, especially eucalyptus branches, in Procreate. And we are also going to take a look at a save-to-date template that I've created just for you, so make sure you stick around until the end so you don't miss any of the free stuff. For the first part of this tutorial, I will be using the Ultimate Watercolor Toolbox, which includes Procreate brushes as well as many other things. But you can still follow along with your favorite brushes if you're not necessarily looking to get a watercolor result. If you do, however, I will link the Ultimate Watercolor Toolbox in the description below so you can check it out. Let's get started. The first thing we are going to do is create a sketch layer and sketch the leaves. So I'm just going to hide the example here and create a new layer. If you do have the Watercolor Toolbox, I recommend that you use the coloring pencil to create your sketch, but otherwise you can use any other sketching brush. And we are just going to draw the main stem here, as well as alternating secondary stems. In eucalyptus, they come in a bunch of different varieties, or at least different leaf shapes. But for this one, I'm going to do just kind of roundish leaves. But you can draw some pointy leaves too, that's really up to you. And one thing that is going to make such a big difference is if you consider the fact that the leaves are not actually just going to be next to each other. They are sometimes going to overlap and also overlap over the main stem. So you don't want to just have leaves that are kind of next to each other like this. You also want to create one that is going to be like here and one that is maybe going to be like this. And that way you're just going to have something that looks way more realistic and just more interesting overall too. Wonderful. Now that you have your sketch, you are going to create a new layer that you're going to put under the sketch. And if you do have the watercolor toolbox, you're going to select the dark edges watercolor and you're going to pick a nice green that you want your leaves to be. Eucalyptus sometimes tend to be a bit more blue as well, which is really cool. So you can move and not have like a bright grass green, but have something that is a bit more turquoise. That's up to you. And you're just going to fill in the leaves individually. And I find that it's nice sometimes to leave some sort of a white section here in the middle. And I also like to go over half of the part of the leaf twice, so it becomes a bit darker and you also see some color variation in here. So just go ahead and do that on all your leaves. Wonderful. We're going to blend in these edges a little bit more, and to do that, go ahead and hide your sketch layer just so we know a bit more of what the piece that we're working on looks like. Sorry. And we are going to grab the water drag brush here. If you don't have a watercolor toolbox, you can use the blending tool here. But go ahead and drag the water drag if you have it, or grab the water drag if you have it. And with a medium size, you are just going to go really quickly over some of the edges. And you're going to see it's not fully blending them in seamlessly. You're still getting some textures. And that looks, at least in my opinion, that just looks so good. And it helps with the watercolor effect. It's kind of like you were dropping some water on your canvas and getting some really organic type of blending happening. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some color variation as well as a gradient in the leaves overall, just to get a bit more depth in the piece. So go ahead and with the selection tool here, set on freehand, just draw a circle on the upper section of your leaves, and you're going to feather the circle around 50%. You're then going to use the hue, saturation, brightness panel here, and you're going to lift up the brightness just a little bit and lower the saturation. That's going to add a bit more light towards the top of your leaves, and you can now reactivate your sketch layer if you want. Yeah, so it's going to add more light towards the top part of your leaf, which kind of mimics as well, you know, when you have a branch, the newest leaf here on the top are usually a bit paler. We are also going to do the same trick, but this time with a squiggly selection that you're going to feather around 30%. And the hue, saturation, brightness, this time you're going to play with the hue and you're going to move it towards the right, which is going to make what is in your selection a bit more blue. And like I said at the beginning, and sometimes eucalyptus leaves tend to be a bit more blue than they would be green. So that's a really cool way of adding some sort of that natural feel to the piece. And you can play with the brightness as well as the saturation until you get something that you like. And you can also do it twice. So we've seen now I've added some blue. I could make another funky selection here that I can feather around 30%. And go back to my hue, saturation, brightness, and I can play with the hue again and add even more contrast in the piece, just like that. One tip that I will give you, and that's kind of optional, is to refine the shape of your leaves. And to do that, you can again hide your shape layer, or your sketch layer I should say, and with the adjustment panel here, you have access to the liquify tool. And the liquify tool, well, you see there are a bunch of options here, but if you select push, what it does is it allows you to move the color on your canvas. So you can make some really pointy leaves if that's what you want, or you can create some indents in your leaf and just play with the shape so they're not as round. They're a bit more character to them. And I find that it makes such a big difference in the final result. It just looks so much more natural and just more interesting overall. And it takes just a few seconds. And also if you made any mistake while you were drawing your shape or blending your shapes, that's a really cool way to fix it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add some effects with the salt brush, which you know if you've watched any of my tutorials, it's my favorite part. And then we're going to draw the stem, of course. But just select the salt brush here from the Ultimate Watercolor Toolbox, and you don't need to worry about the color. It doesn't matter. The only thing you need to worry about is that you're starting your stroke from the outside towards the inside of the color. So if we zoom in, we can see that it's adding some white speckles. And you can play with the size of the brush and just add some white speckles, not everywhere, because otherwise it's a bit too much, at least in my opinion, but it looks cool to add some texture here. We're also going to do the opposite by creating a new layer and selecting the splatter brush. This time you want to make sure that you have a green selected. And we're just going to add some splatters. And going back to that splatter layer, we are going to change the blending mode, so click on the N here and select linear burn. And what that does, it basically just makes the splatters that are on top of the leaves look even darker and just cooler, like they were blending with what's below them. Finally, we are going to add the stem, so go ahead and create a new layer. Make sure that it is under your leaf, and if you want to rearrange the order of your layer, you can always just drag them, so that's really easy, but this one you want to make sure that it's below your leaf, like I said. We're going to turn on the sketch layer again just to know what we're doing. And with the Dark Edges watercolor brush again, you're going to select a green that is a bit more of a yellowish green. So not full on yellow, but just a bit more yellow. And you're going to set the size to fairly small. And you're just going to quickly go over what you sketched for your stems. See if we hide the sketch layer again, you can see that we now have a stem. And you might want to play with the color of the stem if you realize that what you draw is not necessarily optimal. So you can go to the hue, saturation, brightness without any selection, and you can just change it here. So there we have it. We've created a super simple and elegant, just beautiful eucalyptus branch in Procreate. And you can use this technique to create so many different varieties of plants. You just have to change the shape of the leaf, either with your sketch that you draw at first or with the liquify tool that we saw. And you can even create complete wreaths using this tutorial. You just have to, draw a bunch of branches and combine them together. And once you do have branches that you like, you can use them in so many design projects. And I will show you one example with the Save the Date template that I've created. So if you haven't downloaded it yet, make sure to go ahead and do that. It is totally free and I will link it in the description below. So once you have the file on your iPad, you're just going to locate the File app, which is this blue icon here. And in the Browse option here, you're going to find a file that is called Save the Date Template by Genevieve. It is going to be a zip file. If you cannot see it, just use the search bar here at the top. And you can just tap on it. It is going to unzip the file into a folder just like this one. And you're going to notice that there are two different templates. The one in the middle is for Photoshop. So if you want to do the design part on your computer, you can totally use this file and use the same steps. It's really the same exact file, just for Photoshop instead of Procreate. In our case, we are going to take the file which is on the right and that has the extension .procreate, and you're just going to tap on it. It's going to import straight into Procreate. I already have it, so I'm not going to open it again. And this is what it looks like. The first thing we are going to do is we are going to hide this Hide Me layer here by clicking on the checkmark icon here. And we are going to select the style that we want, because you can see here we have circle and rectangle. Rectangle is what we see right now, and we also have a circle option. So that is up to you, that's your personal preference. Let's say I go with the circle. If you click on this arrow here, it is going to open up all the layers that are within that group. And you're going to see that you have bride, groom, date, and location. That's what you can edit, so you don't necessarily have to have a wedding that is between an Eleanor and a Henry. You can just change these names. And the way to do it is you're going to double tap on a layer, which is going to open the layer option here, and you're going to see edit text, which is then going to allow you to just type in whatever you want. So go ahead and do that for the bride, groom, date, and location. And once you are done, you are going to click back on the arrow here, which is going to collapse the group again. The next thing we are going to do is we are going to add art, because right now it looks a bit boring. So you can either follow the first part of the tutorial and draw your branches straight into this one file, so here on the art layer, or you can go and select a different artwork that you've done before. And the way to do that is you go to the gallery, and that's going to open up all your other creations that you did in Procreate. You see here I have monstera leaves as well as succulents, and these are tutorials that I will link in the description below as well if you're not interested into just regular foliage, you want more specific stuff. But for this example, I am going to use the eucalyptus branches that we created in the first part of the tutorial. And one thing you want to make sure is you want to make sure that you hide the background as well as the texture and effects if you're using the pre-textured watercolor file. And it's going to look a bit crazy, but bear with me, this is what we need. You're going to use this tool icon here at the top, which is going to open a menu. And you want to select Add here, which is in the far left. And then you're going to select Copy Canvas. You're going to go back to your gallery, back to the template, making sure you are on the Your Art Here layer. You're going to go back to the tool here, and this time you're going to select Paste. And it's going to paste your artwork. Well, right now it's behind the circle, but you can see that it's on the layer right here. And you can use your arrow and resize it and place it wherever you want to get something that you like. The last step is really easy, and it is to actually export your file so you can print it. And the way to do that is, again, using this tool menu here. You're going to go with Share this time. You're either going to select PDF or JPEG, depending on the printer that you use. This time, for example, I'm just going to take JPEG. It's going to export, and then you can select where you want to put the image. So you can either save the image or you can airdrop it to your computer, for example. You can even send it straight to email. But in this case, I'm just going to save the image, and it's going to be with all your pictures on your iPad. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you did, please leave a thumbs up. I will add the free template link in the description below, along with the Ultimate Watercolor Toolbox, which, like I said, includes some Procreate brushes, but also some really cool effects for Photoshop and some really neat patterns. Also, make sure that you subscribe because I put out new tutorials every week, and if you have an idea for a tutorial you would like to see, make sure to comment below and I will add it to my list.